Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of... We didn't set the timer up. Holy crap. I just looked at the stand in the corner of my... This is how tight I am.
Oh,
okay?
no.
That's fine. That's fine.
Alright, keep rolling.
No, what? No.
No, we don't want to lose the sync. Just keep rolling.
I don't know where the iPad is, so...
Well, welcome to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of Digital Creative Media Works. My name's Ben. David isn't here. He's getting the iPad.
Don't you steal my fucking show.
I am stealing your show.
Don't you steal my You can't afford to keep the iPad.
Today,
Fucking steal my fucking show.
today we're talking about how David forgot to do everything.
You know how we said last week that you're a cuck? Yeah, well, I'm a fucking stud.
That's like your new word. You've learned what it... Do you know what it means yet?
Yeah,
I taught you.
You yelled it at me during an episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome finally back to the Arthritis. I'm David D. Sam, creative director, lead writer. This is Ben.
Just gonna...
I'm fucking checked out, dude. Like, man, this week, Ben, we are talking about... How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
This week we were talking about... I wasn't really asking because I cared. I was asking to ask.
I was surprised why you asked, because you don't care at all.
No. This week we were talking about the mechanics of the Nemesis system. So this is the... Well, I mean, you can probably explain it a bit better than I can. So, from what I understand
It's from Assassin's Creed Middle-earth.
Good joke. It was.
It is.
It actually quite... It is.
Battle for Middle-earth?
Now that I've said it's a
that's
good
like
joke, that's
the
ruined the
2002
joke.
game.
Yeah. It's also an
Shadow
RTS.
of Middle-earth?
Shadow of Mordor. Mordor.
Isn't the new one like Shadow of Mordor,
Shadow of War, which is like... It's Shadow of War, which is like the most... So it's Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, Middle-earth, Shadow of War.
Right. Horrible names.
I mean, the second one's way too generic. Shadow of War? Like, what?
There's just a whole lot of war going on in the sky, and they're just in the shadow going, oh no, there's a lot of war going on up there. In front of the sun. Arguably,
it's under the shadow of the Tower of Sauron, but no, that's neither here nor there. At any rate, so from what I understand about the system, this is going to be a rough episode for you boys and girls at home. David is very tired, and... Boy,
and I'm not having any of it.
Ben is just not in the mood for it. So Here we go. Now, what I understand about the system going into it is... I'll give a quick rundown and you can correct me if I get anything wrong.
Sure.
So, in the game, you play as a character who has like some sort of... He's got some elven powers and he's got some...
He's got Celebrimbor, yeah.
Celebrimbor.
Who is one of the...
he was one of the forges of the 9 Rings of Power.
9 Rings. So he was the elven.
And he's the guy that made the One Ring.
Yeah, so he's the one that went loco crazy and ended up breaking off and creating the One Ring.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and he's the bad one,
and at this stage, it isn't corrupted by Sauron yet. It's just the One Ring of Power.
It's just the One Ring of Power.
So here's what I understand about the premise of the game.
Sure.
And bearing in mind that I played the whole thing, which is forever ago.
I was going to say, I've played less of it, and I only know this because I've been run down.
I'm also a real dum-dum.
I've had like the whole background of who like Celebrimbor is.
I learned a lot about I learned a bunch about... You have a lot of friends.
I have a lot of friends who are like super into Lord of the Rings. So they've all told me like where this sits in the lore. It is an alternate universe, technically.
Technically, but it also may not be depending on how this ends.
Because Celebrimbor is not meant to be a wraith at all. He's meant to not be there at all. He's not meant to be there.
We'll get to it.
Excuse me.
We'll get to it. There you go, fool. We'll get to it. Did you know?
We will get to it. Let's talk about the Nemesis system.
Yeah, okay. So from what I understand, you play as Talion, who is associated with this wraith character, and that he has powers that he uses to kill, corrupt, and interact with orcs who exist in a hierarchy. And the orcs have like a hierarchical structure where there are war chiefs at the very top. They have like captains and lieutenants and other people, funneling all the way down to just like your bottom of the barrel grunt orcs.
Chaff.
And from what I understand, each orc is assigned a series of values that give it a sort of a personality. So there's 50 different voices in the game. They have like a random name generator that combines words, and what it does is it associates all of those together in some kind of cohesiveness to create a believable character. So like you'll have a character who's quite fat and like angry, and his voice will be kind of like, he'll sound like he's kind of bumbling and angry,
and it's so like he can't be blocked.
Yeah, but
he's like scared of fire.
Yeah, so they usually have one attribute to start with, and then they have a strength and a weakness to start with, and then as you learn more about them, fuck off, cat, you vomited on the floor. I don't know if it's going to come up on the audio, but for the listener at home, The cat vomited on the floor, and then he's now outside meowing at us. So fuck that guy. So, fuck, I lost my train of thought. That was a really bad idea to do that joke.
When you learn more about them.
When you learn more about them, they gain new attributes based on what happens to them in the world as you learn more about them. So, no, let me explain. So
that's what it's meant to be like, yeah.
So an event is triggered in the world as you move through an area, and whether or not you see it, if you're within the vicinity, an event is triggered, an event occurs, you could have interacted with it, and the outcome of that event then adds an attribute or takes one away to that character.
Right.
Or in some way changes its whether like they might that orc might kill someone else, or it might get attacked by a warg and then be afraid of wargs, or he might get poisoned by grog and then he refuses to drink from grog barrels, or like maybe he gets killed on fire so he's afraid of fire. Like there's a variation of different attributes that, if most commonly the way it happens, and the most common way you discover new people at the start of the game is you'll get killed by a character, by a random enemy, and then when they kill you, that triggers it takes whatever the template was for that random orc and it makes them into a character on the board.
Yeah.
And it gives them a name, and they gain power from killing you. Yeah. So they gain ranks. So one of the ways that you can advance characters in the game is by letting them kill you to become like the top rank.
Yeah, which is a weird way of doing it, but it's a way of doing it.
I thought that was the best way to... Oh, you can have them kill other people, can't you?
You can, there's sort of different ways of doing it. You can kind of like help them along in like their natural process, or you can have like an insider. So you can actually have one, you
ally them to you.
Yeah, you can like control one. And basically, they don't attack you. So, then you kind of just help them along.
Well, yeah, and they become like your friend kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a few... The structure of the game is really annoying because it introduces these really important game mechanics as just being random side bits of the story that are scripted. Despite the fact that it's not scripted, it's actually very important and a huge mechanic in the game. And they do it like 8 hours in. But that aside, once you actually get... the full featured Nemesis system. Yeah, it's this sort of... When you're playing it, it's this living, breathing sort of like dynamic system where you never really know what's going to come next. It's not like, oh, this guy's the final boss, even though there is a final boss. But it's like, here are your sort of enemies.
Yeah, and so what it feels like in the game when you're playing it is that outside of the space that you're physically occupying, it feels like the world continues to occur.
Yeah, and it's all complete bullshit. It's all entirely smoke and mirrors.
So two things before we get into it, because I have so many questions.
Sure.
So Mike Bithell has a great blog post about it that breaks down like the 7 different ways that they make you think a character is like bullying you on purpose, or like particularly interested in you in some way.
I haven't read the blog post.
It's not very good, but it I only say that because when I was doing a bit of research, what I kind of started to learn was that I don't understand enough about game development systems to be able to like get my head around how the overlapping systems work. But the other thing that I started to realize is that no one else really is able to answer coherently like the way that it works when you play it. They just have like, oh, well, there'll be like 4 different things that interact and they create that thing. What I'm interested in is when you're playing it, how do you get whatever the systems exist, and what are they, and how do they give you the illusion of...
So I think there's like a few things that you have to like sort of nail down with systems like these. And a lot of this it's a weird thing where you can actually tell a lot about you can find out a lot about a system based on how much information you can find about it. So if you go and try to find like, how does the Nemesis system work? You'll get 0 answers. You'll get people saying like, you'll get like marketing bullshit where it's like, the orcs are out there living in this world and they're interacting with each other and they're gaining strengths and weak. No, they're not.
Oh, my fun fact.
It's a bunch of random events that just say, when this happens, do this.
Before you get too much into it, my fun fact that I know about this game that took me forever to fucking find, like I did like a lot of journalism digging and whatnot, was that apparently during the development of the game, I only found this out from reading like really obscure back tweets and blogs.
Oh god, yeah.
I was up really late the other night because I was like, I got like into the rabbit hole.
Minimal research.
I got into the rabbit hole of like the development of the game because I was hoping to find some answers about the system.
Right.
I'm just not a game developer, so it was like inaccessible to me.
Super late.
No, what happened was there was a team that was working on the system. And they weren't communicating very well with the publicity team or the people that were like publishing it.
Oh, so it's like a No Man's Sky kind of thing.
Sort of, no, less though, because Monolith weren't really having, like, they weren't communicating well with Warner Brothers in such a way that internally Monolith was struggling to communicate, like, at all with each other.
Right.
So, like, they were developing the system, and even in, like, some of the pre-alpha builds, there were all these features that they were going to have that stayed in the game until, like, one of the builds before launch, like, really late. Like, additional features in the Nemesis system that would have made it, like, crazy. Well, no, they were like, we were never working on that. We don't know why that's... Like, why would you think that's in the game? And everyone was like, well, because it's in the like patch notes for this release. And they were like, yeah, we took that out 2 weeks ago. And they're like, why didn't you tell us? And so it's just this like whole mess of like at every level the communication failed between the teams and how they were working. So that was this
the game is actually good.
Well, that's part of what there was I think it was a Kotaku article maybe that was talking a bit about why that was so weird for them, like why the Nemesis system could have been much more like complex and elaborate or whatever. And so I was like, maybe that's why there's no information on it. And this is what I think is because honestly, no one knew at the time. Yeah. Like when it came out, the people making it didn't really know how to talk about it because the team hadn't communicated thoroughly enough with each other, such that when it was time to market it and explain how it worked, they were like, we don't fucking know because no one's really spoken to us.
The fact that, and even when the game is out, the fact that no one has been able to go back and really sort of properly sort of reverse engineer how the system actually works.
So what does that mean?
So, you know, if you think about like...
No, I know what reverse engineering it means. I mean, in that... What are the implications? What are the implications?
So if you think about like Dark Souls, Dark Souls tells the player nothing about how its systems work.
Yeah.
But people are able to go in and figure out all this amazing stuff and how the game actually works. That's because the systems in Dark Souls are actually built to sort of, it's kind of, in a sense, you give it an input, it'll give you an output. You give it the same input, it'll probably, you know, it will usually give you the same output. You know, it's a fairly deterministic thing.
Yes.
And while AI is reasonably, because it's just a big AI system.
And so AI in this context refers to the...
Sort of because the...
You don't just mean the enemies, do you?
No, I mean, because the game isn't sort of running AI on all the individual characters everywhere in the world while you're not there. Like that's not happening.
We're talking Shadow Mortal.
Shadow Mortal. Yeah. So like when you're in some area of the map, it's not running calculations on fights.
It's like fog of war around you of what's happening.
And outside that fog of war, it's just running very simple, you know, checks and, you know, some random numbers and
it's saying it's been 5 minutes. Trigger this change in this number in this table.
Yeah, it's been 5 minutes. Do that thing. Yeah. Okay, we're starting a duel.
It's like roll the dice, trigger that event, which is this in this table, which makes this
almost guaranteed it's doing that.
So
and it's the kind of thing where because it's doing that, it's really hard for players to go, to metagame the Nemesis system and get like a really strong ally, do these things because they will cause these things to happen.
That's what you mean by it's hard to reverse engineer.
Yeah, whereas in Dark Souls, when people are like, if you want to, Dark Souls is a bit different, but it's like, to do well in Dark Souls, do these things because the game is
quite determined.
Yeah, the game is quite deterministic.
Yep.
Even boss battles, you can be like, if you get close to them, they'll do this animation, and then you roll out of the way.
Yeah, you can teach someone to be good at Dark Souls.
And even if you look at games that are insanely complex, so like Dwarf Fortress, for example, which is
context. Give me the cliff note.
It's a really advanced, really complex sort of management game.
Okay.
It's like...
Is it like Football Manager, but... Because that's like that's an insanely complex system.
Okay. It's like... It's had about a 10-year development cycle. It's a text-based game, I might add.
No, that's... I mean, Football Manager is a bunch of dots on a screen. So I love that
Fortress is insane, but everything follows a logical flow. Even though, like, it'll have moments where, like, there was a patch that came out where cats were just dying in a puddle of their own vomit for no reason, except for this long contrived string of like dependencies and like logical reasons as to why all of the cats were dying in a pool of their own vomit.
Right. So it's like
there's a difference between like I'm just going to pick something and do it versus something's going to happen which seems really random, but there's a method.
You can follow it through.
Yeah. If you understand the system, you can follow it through.
So it's like this line of code told us that all the cats in this area would drink this puddle of water, which we told was radiated. Which
the reason why cats were dying of their own vomit was they added a thing where animals, where things could clean themselves if they got covered in something. And when they clean themselves, they leave behind the puddle of that something on the ground when they clean themselves.
Sure.
And then what happened is, as they found out that cats were dying from alcohol poisoning, they were like, but cats aren't meant to drink alcohol. But then they found out that there were dwarves would be in a pub drinking alcohol. They would get given a job. They would just throw their beer on the ground because they're dwarves, run off. The cats would walk through the tavern, get covered in alcohol, then lick themselves clean and just a shit ton of alcohol and die.
That's crazy.
So, like, there's a logical flow as to why all these cats were dying in their own pool of vomit. But it seems random. Whereas in something like Shadow of Mordor,
it is random?
It's guaranteed random. Like, you know, you'll be running along and it'll be like, so-and-so is having a duel with someone else. And you're like, that just happens.
Right,
like,
but
there's no reason as to why it happens.
No, sure, but like, it doesn't... I guess what I'm curious about is, as a developer, how do you make that not feel random? And I know it's because of like world building and stuff like that, but like, no other game has really done what they did. And no one's copied it.
Well, I think the reason it works is that the fact that it doesn't actually matter that it's random. If you think about it, walking along and then having a pop-up and say, there's a duel happening, you're not like, oh, that wouldn't happen.
So is it like the Skyrim effect where there's just enough space and enough events and if you have enough random ones, you stop noticing that they're random?
I think it's a thing where the random element, like, when I say the Nemesis system is complete bullshit and random, most of it comes from most of the randomness is just the actions that happen. So, like, the sort of like a duel is starting and, like, you know, maybe who wins the duel. Like, that stuff is kind of random unless you go in and actually
that stuff's
manipulate
that stuff's like Pokemon, right? Though in some ways, because...
In a sense, yeah.
Because they'll have attributes and stats.
It sort of looks at them and goes, yeah, this one would
and
win.
It rolls the dice and it
goes, this one would have a 90% chance of winning. But it's the kind of thing where that stuff is random, but I think the core of the Nemesis system with the changing sort of movement and the changing like alliances, like I think that is mostly deterministic. It sort of like follows, you know, this person won the duel, so they got more powerful. You know, you killed this person who is, you know, the bodyguard of this warlord, so this warlord now like really hates you. Like that stuff has like a very obvious
that's got logic.
Do this, get this. You know,
if
I put in this output and I get the same output.
If this, then this or this.
Yeah, put in this input, get the same output.
So that stuff, they just set logical if or gates for like different activities.
And I mean, some of it could be kind of like semi-random where it's just like, you know, this orc might be like, oh, if you kill his bodyguards, he gets really angry, and this guy is like, oh, he doesn't really care, but they all kind of act the same. You kill their bodyguards and they're like, hey,
like, dude,
don't.
like, dude.
Yeah, none of them is going to be like, nah, it's fine. I didn't like him anyway. Like, no.
Well, you get the same event. You get a similar event each time, but the context of the event is different. So, like, sometimes it'll be such that you'll kill one and he'll be upset with you that you've killed them. And instead of, like, doing, like, a war, like, rally or something, he'll go for, like a walk with some of his other people as, like, a funeral march or something. So, like, they give it some context through just, like, literal text and some interactions. But, like... I guess why hasn't Assassin's Creed copied it? Like no, but like So here's what's frustrating to me as someone that like here's the potential I see, and let me pitch you. So let's say like I could see the applications in so many different ways.
I mean,
that would give flavor to different.
They
stuff.
did attempt with Syndicate.
Let me explain why it doesn't work in a second. But like so. Okay, let's say you're playing like NBA 2K, like the basketball game.
Sure.
No, but like hear me out, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a similar system where it tracks different people and it gives different people like different characters and different attributes and different events that have occurred, right? And like you play through the My Career mode where you play as like a rising star in the NBA, and like say it's like James Harden or something. He's like you probably don't know basketball, but like
don't at all.
Anyway, well, it's some random guy. It's some computer generated
some person,
some computer generated other rookie who's at your level. And in your first few matches, when you play against him, he always steals off you when you're on offense, right?
Sure.
And then after a few games, every time that you face off against him, your nerves are like shot, and like you lose points, and like you're less agile, and like you have nice little interactions before the game and during the game, and like you can add some flavor in there. And then like a season later, when you've moved to a different team and you're facing off and you're like much better and you've trained your character more mentally, you come at him and instead of having shot nerves, you actually have a better chance of scoring because he's your rival. Right. You can like have like little spots of that kind of thing in games that exist and have like pretty dense systems already in place that are like structurally sound, and it would give you that like spice that you need to make games like that interesting again. Like we've all played like 13 different versions of Madden and like 15 FIFAs.
Well, you have. I haven't played any of them.
But like, could you imagine like, you know, you've got the game isn't changing. Football's not changing.
No.
So you bring on an extra development team to work on that. Like that'd be so amazing. And you could do that in Assassin's Creed. You kill a guard of a like fucking fortress, and then like another guard that you ran away from, who knows who you are, like becomes like the head of the thing, and you have to like bribe him to stop him from like attacking your allies. Like there's so many things you could do with it. Why has no one copied it?
I think a big reason behind it is that if you had like if you took Assassin's Creed, right, and then you tacked on, you put on that Nemesis system, the boardroom would be looking at the list of features, and it would probably be the first one to get cut, because the games don't really need that kind of like AI based like narrative stuff, because it's, you know, if stories sell games, boobs sell games, and if it has those, they're generally going to just be like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, features don't. I mean, I remember when games, like when the Xbox was first out, features sold games. Yeah. On the back of every box, you can pick up like any old Xbox game from like the early days, and it would be like features and it would be like features this, this kind of action, and features these kinds of weapons. Like that would like, it was always like, features outdoor environments with vehicles, and like it would always be about like the tech feature that was different from every other game.
I think
Whereas now you can do anything with a game engine.
I think the reason why it works in Shadow of Mordor is that if you take away the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor, it's not a good game.
So it works because they built the game around it.
I think it works because they did the smart thing. They looked at their game either when they were like sort of pitching it or sort of early on. They went, this is just Assassin's Creed, but not as good because it doesn't have the name.
Better combat.
Well, yeah, better combat. But it's the kind of thing where, if they looked at it and went like, this could have more. And I think the Nemesis system, the reason why a lot of people are like, oh, it's really good, is because it adds so much to that game in particular.
And I guess the thing then, that you've adequately answered my question, which was bothering me, which is why it wasn't everyone copied it. But
yeah,
I just think it's so interesting that a AAA publisher with a nearly AAA studio, Monolith isn't quite there. They're really close though. They published a game that had a shitload of money behind it and a bunch of board interference, and it was marketed to hell. Like they spent a lot of money on that, and it did something new. Like it had like.
That's the weird thing.
That's like
that it had the Nemesis system.
You've never in your entire life, like never since Modern Warfare, World at War, have you uttered the phrase, "Well, at least Call of Duty is doing new things," because they're not inventing new stuff, and like Titanfall didn't really invent anything new, and like
well, Titanfall didn't invent anything, but it brought a lot of things back.
Sure, but like. It stresses me out that a lot of and I get that it doesn't make money to do new things. I understand that. I'm not stupid. Like people aren't going to be like, I'm going to buy Mirror's Edge 2 because it's like the first one but better. Like
Mirror's
that's
Edge
not
Catalyst.
Well, fucking whatever.
Catalyst.
Shut the fuck up. Like I get it. Like don't get me wrong, but like why not take a risk if it works?
I mean, I think the more interesting thing is that no one from the indie scene has tackled it either.
Is that just a scale issue?
I think it is. I think it is
because you need a lot of people to make that work.
It's the kind of thing where you look at Shadow of Mordor and it's just like you're like, oh, the Nemesis system is really cool. It's really interesting, but it kind of really works when there's this big open world tacked onto it.
Yeah, and
because you need the space to move around to have
the events occur.
Yeah, you need space, and unless you're literally like setting your game in like space, it's really hard to create. At least as an indie, to make enough room for those things to happen without it being like a text-based game
or like an empty sandbox.
Yeah,
because like that's the other thing too. I mean, one of my biggest criticisms of Shadow of Mordor is that when you've finished it and you've got all the powers, the Nemesis system doesn't really exist because there's no reason not to have everyone under your control because you've got the ability to do that. So then what you do is you start fucking around with it, and you like that's like the interesting part of the game.
Yeah,
is that when I spent like 20 hours after I finished, like fucking around, seeing what I could make happen. Like, could I get a an orc from like a baby to like a war chief without me taking control of him, like just by letting him kill me and like killing his competitors and like, can that happen? And it's like, yeah, cool, I made that. And you kind of do other weird shit with it and it's fun, but then
there's no point.
there's no like
there's no
like,
reason to do that.
But then it falls into the same problem that Assassin's Creed does, where it's like when you finish the story, the game's over.
Yeah.
And Syndicate, the story wasn't good, so then there's like not... Okay, sorry. It was the best of the stories that we've seen since 4, but it wasn't compelling, and I don't know, I think... you know what it was? It was like... You know
was it, David? Seeing as I haven't played it.
You know when Control-Alt-Delete did that comic where it was like about his partner having like a miscarriage and like, ended their relationship?
Lost.jpg?
Yeah.
Right, so Lost.jpg.
Okay, this is like a deep cut internet reference.
So we do with memes
but like,
at the moment.
But like, when that happened, that was like, the main reason people didn't like that is it was sort of self-aggrandizing and it wasn't in tone and it didn't make sense.
Oh, right. You're talking about like when it actually happened and everyone's like, what the fuck is this shit?
Like it didn't make, it just felt, and the internet hates anything that's self-aggrandizing. And the Assassin's Creed Syndicate story felt like they wrote it and they were like, guys, we have a really good story. And the whole time you're playing
it... It's like the video game version of Lost.
Well, no, it's not even that. But the whole time you're playing it, it feels like the writers and the developers are saying to you the whole time, guys, we wrote a really good story. Don't you love it? And it just gets tiring.
Right.
And it's like the only earnest parts of the story are like the conflict between the two siblings in the game that you play as.
Sure.
But it's not valid conflict because you play as both of them. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, it kind of breaks it down.
It doesn't. It'd be like if Franklin and Michael in GTA 5 had an argument, but like you can just switch between them at any second, and it doesn't work. Yeah. And like that whole game, like they had such good ideas, and they just fucked it up so badly because they got in their heads that the systems they built were good and the story was great. And if they'd added on, if they'd stopped focusing on like trying to write such a good story, or assuming that they written a good one, there would have been room, I think, to do some more interesting mechanics. Not the Nemesis system, but something similar in some ways.
They had that gang thing going on, didn't they? Was that contrived and shit?
No, that's just that's literally a lift out of the tower capture in every other Ubisoft game. Oh. They just relabeled it and they put a different skin on it and they made it feel different, but it's the same. You just capture an area and you get increased.
You can fast travel there?
Yeah, and like, well, no, you can fast travel by getting the towers, which is always how it's been. There, yeah. But
classic Ubisoft towers.
No, but I mean the way it works in that one is you to take over the gang, you have to do a bunch of like side quests, and then you get like a big gang fight, and then you take over the gang. But there's no like, it's not like dynamic. Ever. You can accidentally kill the gang leader during one of the side quests, but you still have to do all the side quests.
No, okay.
So,
So, what do you think of the Shadow War then? Because
it's stressing me out because what they've done is...
Yeah, because I haven't seen much. What are they doing with 2.0?
Okay,
Nemesis?
so the reason the Nemesis system works is because it simulates a world going on outside your focal point.
Right.
The new game is expanding your focal point dramatically. So instead of being like one region, one war chief, good news. It's like it's like county sized. Like the whole game is like a country area on the map, and you're like in one county.
Well, now it's like it's not
like
just
captains of fortresses and
it doesn't seem like it's just the Nemesis system. It feels like there's like 12 of them, like 12 individual Nemesis pockets.
But from what,
and then you have one now because you have your own army.
But from what so what it is that you now, so the way that it looks like it's going to work is that you control your own Nemesis system.
Yep.
Of your own characters. They have their own infighting and stuff, and you can go help people, and you can like promote. And then there's like other people that own other fortresses with their own Nemesis systems that you can interact with as you had previously, or you can use your Nemesis system to interact with their Nemesis system. So it looks like
it's really not a good idea.
In theory, it sounds great, I've never before has a game worked where they've been like,
what if smash two AIs against each other? It never. I don't think there exists a single...
Oh, I didn't even mention the other thing. There's also NPC armies that aren't orcs and they're not your army. They're like humans and elves.
Yo, yeah.
So like there's going to be, and it might just be story related, I don't know. But there's also going to be a third element that's like on, you can't affect what they're doing. So how is that going to interact with that? I don't know. Like it just, from what I've seen, it looks like they've scaled it up. They've given you your own system to deal with as well.
Yeah.
But in doing all of that, I feel like I'm not going to give a shit about any of it because it's too big.
Yeah, I think it's the like the interesting nature of the Nemesis system. Well, especially when you have all these like intertwining alliances, and you with the first game, you have like a map in your mind of what your current like Nemesis layout looks like, because you've seen it so many times, because it's always and it's really easy to access, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna quickly check this one guy I'm tracking. I'm going to press start and just like immediately go to where he is, because I know where he is. I've tagged him on my map. And I'm going to go check him out and like maybe try to kill him again. But like this one, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to that one fortress in that one area and check the. It's like you're just gonna get bogged down in menus, and I feel like it loses some of the
charm, I guess.
Yeah, and the personality and like the intimacy with it.
You know what it is, and I talk about this in my Zelda video for the antagonist. There's like an intimacy in like solitude in like open world games.
Yeah. Like
there's an intimacy like in Red Dead Redemption. You spend like 100 hours with like John Marston walking around the Old West. So you become like really intimate with that character in that space. And like in Shadow of Mordor, like it's intimate because no one else is a human. It's just you. You're the only person that you can really identify.
A whole bunch of orcs.
And like in Zelda, it's like you spend a lot of time alone in that game because there's like no one else. It's like a dead world.
Everyone's like dead.
You become like really intimate with the game and the setting and the character. Taking that and then putting it in the setting of Shadow of War feels like what's going to happen is the charm of like the dichotomy of Talion and Celebrimbor and the intimacy of the solitude of being the only person that can really like have any effect on this war is going to become stifled by the fact that you're going to have to like manage such a large scale that no longer is it just you. It's like, oh, it's me and it's my army over here and it's my one insider over there and it's my guy that I killed over there and it's this dude that I brought back from the dead over here and it's this other lieutenant that I've corrupted that he hasn't revealed that he's corrupted, but he's working his way into this, and then it's this, and it's just gonna get to a point where I'm like, I think it's gonna be exhausting and I don't want to play it, and that's why like I don't know if it's just like an age thing or if I'm like, I don't know what it is, but anytime a game gets too complex when it shouldn't be, it bothers me.
Right.
If you're playing Civilization, complex it the fuck up.
Go ham.
But like, I don't want to have to. I want to pick up Shadow of Mordor. I want it to be intuitive, and I want to like cut some fucking orcs' heads off, have a good time, not think too hard,
and have like a little bit of strategy with like this interesting like hit list that I have.
Yeah, it's like playing chess with a 2-year-old. You're gonna win, but like it's fun.
You're gonna play around for a bit. Yeah, you're gonna toy with them.
But I feel like the next game is gonna be like,
you're a big boy now. You got your own army. You got to take out the fortresses. You're like, I don't. Yeah.
You're playing chess with a 2-year-old, but it's actually 4 chessboards against each other with 4 sets of chess pieces, and you can move across any board.
And like 16 2-year-olds.
Yeah, and I'm like
way too many 2-year-olds.
And I'd pass out from exhaustion.
It's I think this is going to be the difference between like Shadow of Mordor is like babysitting, Shadow of War is like working in a childcare center.
Yeah, one of them is
going to be 12 2-year-olds everywhere.
One of them's fine for 4 hours on a Friday. The other one makes you want to kill yourself.
Yeah. You get paid the same amount for both.
No disrespect to people that work at
Shout outs to all those blue card holders.
Honestly, fuck man, y'all are like,
don't know how you guys do it.
Y'all are goddamn heroes. And y'all got to keep saying to everyone that you love kids. We fucking know the truth, man. We're so sorry, and we thank you for looking after our kids while we work our jobs, man. We don't have
all those
kids
that we have.
We don't have no kids, but I feel like on behalf of the human race, it might be a good place to end. Look, the system itself, I think, has a lot of potential.
Honestly, I think there are a lot of really cool things you could do if you just take it. If you take it and somehow like surgically remove it from the open world, and do cool things with it. I mean, that's I'm like, why isn't there are games out there that kind of play with the same idea, but they just don't. It's having. I think the visualization is key to why the Nemesis system is so cool. Yeah. Seeing that row of orcs, I think, is a really cool visual metaphor that like really nails down like what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, Bithell talks about the value of the ones that are shadowed out.
Yeah,
because they don't exist in the game, obviously. Sorry to shatter the illusion, but until you interact with someone, they don't.
Oh yeah, they're not there.
No,
yeah.
They're literally just like, they might as well be empty JPEGs. Yeah. But
just
he was
a broken JPEG image.
But he was
not found.
I mean, effectively. But his argument for their value is that what it does is, as a player, when you uncover that, it's like you get like it's like a reward, like it's like fog of war. Like it's
they
like
also
a sense
they
of
also
reward.
show you the full amount of what you're gonna have to deal with. You're not like
the first time you see that menu, you're like, fuck, there's a lot of orcs.
You're like, man, that's a lot, but you're like, it's not 50, it's like it's 16.
You can butcher like
Whatever.
100 orcs in one sitting.
Yeah.
But they're not lieutenants.
Yeah.
You know. And that, yeah, I mean, actually, this is
I'm
probably,
not looking forward to like 20 of those boards in the next one. It's basically
well, this might be this is the point that I want to end on, I guess, is that is 100% what I'm stressed about, and I know they're going to do it. There is a way they could make it work, and the only way that happens is if the management of that stuff is fairly autonomous in the way that you have to deal with it.
I think if it's going to work...
So you just set a guy in charge. So here's what, if I was them, you set a guy in charge of your Nemesis system, like your lieutenant, and he has allies, and there's like...
He just does things
and they just do it.
you.
And you can go and help
He's
if
your
you want.
butler.
Yeah, you can go and help sort that out if there's, whatever. Or you could just leave it.
Yeah, he's your orc butler.
Yeah, and you have one of them for each area, and then and that's fine. I'd be fine with that. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to try and make everything... They're like, oh, we're going to ramp it up. We're going to make it more extreme. It's going to be bigger and better. And
you have to do everything because you're the main character.
And that is stressful because it looks like they've even like they've complicated like the abilities and like they've added more stuff.
Oh, there's just...
I don't want more combos
the
to
button
push.
presses were hard enough as is. Like the fucking...
I mean, Batman...
The Batman combat system is really hard
Batman
sometimes.
nailed it in Arkham City where it's like you've got like 4 or 5 combinations. That's it.
Yeah,
and
even
then,
like
you double tap bumpers to do different things when you fight, like, and you get the hang of it.
Even then, like remembering what to double tap.
It's actually I've never repeat this to anyone else. You listening at home, but the Arkham games are really easy to play on a keyboard
because it's just one through.
You double tap the button and it does the quick fire.
Yeah,
and the mouse button, the right click is counter.
Button, it's like and hold the left trigger and double tap the right bumper while you scratch your nuts.
No. The fucking keyboard is the easiest way to play those games. And every time I say that, people look at me like I've killed a fucking child. Because you can't say that as a PC. You can't say like people are like, you're a fucking PC snob. It's an action game. You should play it on a controller. Third person. No, best way to play it.
It's best on keyboard.
Conversely, Shadow Mortal controller. But no, I don't know. I want it to be good, but I also think that they've got to a point now where the idea is going to eclipse their ability to make it work.
Well, I'm not spending full price on it because I don't do that. So
no, well,
that's my review.
I don't know how long.
That's my pre-review of the game. I'm not paying for it.
Yeah, I don't know how long until I'll buy it, but at some point I will check it out. But mainly because I'm curious. Probably months.
I got the first game for about $5, so plan to get the second one for about $5.
Dude, nice. Yeah. That's probably a good place to end. A good a place as any to end is what I was trying to say, and then my mouth stopped working. my mouth got me in trouble. Have you got any recommendations this week, Ben?
I'm playing a game called Hacknet. It's fun.
Oh, okay.
It's like probably there's so many like hacking games out there. This is probably the only good one. Because it uses proper Linux commands in the command line. Ooh, I love it.
I was almost interested.
I know.
I've been listening to the new Smith Street Band record, which is called "More Scared of You Than You Are of Me," and it's like yelly. I really love it. It's really fucking depressing.
Are they the lesbians?
No, you ask this every week. They're not. They're different. Okay. It's really fucking depressing, and I love it. I've been listening to that, and I've been trying to finish Boss Girl, which is on Netflix, which is like about this like fashion. I think I mentioned this before.
Right.
It's really hard because every time I start watching it, I'm like, Gilmore Girls is better, so I just watch more Gilmore Girls. So that's like what I've been doing. But as always, Ben, it's that time of the week. Where can people find us?
Facebook.
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yep.
YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Patreon. That's where the money comes from.
That's a good one.
Patreon.com/DCMworks.
Instagram.
I was in the middle of a read there, thank you. Thanks this week to Joep Koemans, who's finally joined the Patreon train. Long-time listener, first-time patron.
I have a blister on my hand. Yeah, that's really painful.
And also Anonymous. There are 2 top patrons. If you want to help support the show, it's the best way to do it. It helps us keep the lights on and
those lights, and I'm not going to do that joke again.
No, you've done that a few times. Yeah, helps us keep the lights on, and you get some free. You get the behind the scenes stuff. It's great. You get some extra podcasts.
You get you get the garbage.
I mean, the one that we've just done is
shovel off.
Fucking amazing. The N one turned out really well, so check that out.
The what one?
The short story that I read you.
Oh yeah,
turned out really well. Actually.
That was just a fun time.
That was really. I want to do more of that stuff.
Made me very sleepy though. I was quite tired.
We're gonna look at some other stuff. It's exhausting. We're looking at doing some more of that stuff. So check that out. And as always, this episode is brought to you by DigitalOcean. They are a website hosting service. If you go to dcm.works/ocean, you can get $10 of credit on us. That's equivalent to like 2 months of hosting. It's a pretty good deal. Helps us out, helps out the show. Takes you like 90 seconds to set up a droplet. They're really easy to use. I can use them. They host our podcast, so check them out.
And if David can use them, anyone can, because David's an idiot.
I am a moron. And they're so helpful because I'm such a ditz.
Yeah.
So check them out. We really love working with them, and we don't recommend stuff we don't like. So peep them, check them,
that's fair.
have a squiz, see what they're about. And if you go to dcm.work/ocean, it helps us out, helps you out, and it's just a good time for everyone. I'm at DCM My Head Pie.
I'm at Literal Citrus.
And we'll see you guys next week. Unless we have like a horrible accident. You're just like repeatedly finger gunning?
Finger gunning is life, dude.
Don't say that.
Finger gunning is life.
I guess I didn't record on the phone.
What?
I don't know, I'll have a look. It might have just run out of space.
Orcs.
It's probably fine.
It's probably fine.